How's it going, everyone? This is Jack here with the Commanders Wire, and welcome back to another video. Today we have another one of my free agent target videos, and we'll be going over the tight end position. This is obviously a position that needs to be filled for Jayden Daniels, especially with the major injury that Zach Ertz had over this last season, which makes me believe that he may not be playing football, unfortunately, next year or potentially the rest of his life. So I think his career may be over, and because of that, we need to look at some potential tight end free agent targets that the Commanders could look at bringing in for the 2026 season. Before I get into this video, I'd really appreciate it if you guys went down below, dropped a like, subscribed, and turn on post notifications to know when I post next. You'll be notified on videos just like this about the Commanders and other things regarding the Washington Commanders organization. And on top of that, we're on the road to 1,000 subscribers, so I really do appreciate it if you went down below and just subscribed. It really does help me out. And without further ado, let's get right into the video. So for the first tight end on the list, I have one guy that is pretty popular around the league, especially because he is a free agent, and that's going to be Kyle Pitts. Obviously, for the Atlanta Falcons, he had a very up and down career so far. At some points, he has shown flashes of being a top tight end in the NFL, and at other points, he has been basically nowhere to be seen. So for this year with the Falcons, he had a total of 88 receptions, 928 yards, 5 touchdowns, and he averaged 10.5 yards per reception. So that's not that bad for a tight end. We obviously saw that Drake London had a lot of injuries this year, which caused him to be out of the lineup for some games, and that allowed Kyle Pitts to kind of have a greater role when it came to the passing game. We also saw Michael Penix go down with a major injury, and Kirk Cousins came back in to be that team starter. And I think that also allowed Kyle Pitts to see a greater share of passes. As we know, Kirk Cousins is definitely more of a pocket passer. He's not running at his old age anymore, so I think that really helped Kyle Pitts out. And obviously, we also saw that last Buccaneers game, well, Kyle Pitts had 150 yards of receiving, and that was, a really big game for him, as he had more than half of his touchdowns, I believe, also in that one game. And I think that is one of the highlights of this season for him, going into his free agent offseason. So I think Kyle Pitts is definitely at the top of my radar when it comes to the tight end position. However, me personally, I don't think he would fit that well with the Washington Commanders organization. Kyle Pitts is the type of tight end where he needs to be the focal point of the offense. You look at a guy like Trey McBride, George Kittle, they are most of the time one of the first reads for their quarterbacks, and that's why they have been so good over the course of their careers. I think Kyle Pitts needs to find a home where he is a main read almost every play, and because of that, he'll be able to break out, use his size, use his athleticism to be one of the top tight ends in the NFL. We all know Kyle Pitts is more of a oversized wide receiver than he is a tight end, so I think that if he can find a team that would be able to fit him into the offense and allow him to be a top target for whatever offense he's in, I think that would be the best home for him. Unfortunately, that means for the Washington Commanders, I don't think that is here. As well as he may be looking for a big contract. I don't know if the Commanders want to spend so much money on just a singular player. They already have Terry McLaurin. They already need to add a lot more guys in the wide receiver room, as well as maybe even the running back room. So I don't know if Kyle Pitts is going to be the top target for the Washington Commanders. The next guy is going to be a fellow player in the NFC East, being Dallas Goedert. He's a tight end for the Eagles. This year, he had 60 receptions, 591 yards, 11 touchdowns, and he averaged 9.9 yards per reception. I think that he'd be a great tight end to come to the Washington Commanders. However, I just don't see him leaving Philadelphia. I think he's found a home there. He's on the wrong side of 30, and I think he's looking to stay with the Philadelphia Eagles for the rest of his career. Now, that may not happen. He could want to go to a different team and see if he can carve out a role for himself there. However, I think that he already has a pretty predominant role with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I just really don't see him leaving. So with that being said, I don't know if the Washington Commanders will even get a chance to bring Dallas Goedert into the Washington Commanders organization. Next up is another guy that's getting close to the age of 30, being David Njoku. Now for the Cleveland Browns, he had 33 receptions, 293 yards, 4 touchdowns, and 8.9 yards per reception. He struggled with injuries over the course of this season, and I think that he is most likely not going to stay with the Browns, as they have found a new tight end one in the rookie from Bowling Green. I think his name is Harold Fannin Jr., and I think that they're going to stay with Harold Fannin Jr. for the foreseeable future. So I think that David Njoku is going to be most likely on the free agent market, and he could be someone that the Commanders could look into getting in. Obviously, he's not going to be someone that is going to be receiving the bulk of the passes. He's going to fit more of that safety blanket role for Jayden Daniels to find soft zones and to be kind of a last resort target in case Jayden Daniels needs to get the ball out quick and can't get the ball to one of his first 2 or 3 reads. I think David Njoku also will play that role well. He's athletic. Even though he is getting older, he has struggled with injuries, and I think that if he's fitting more of a role that's, not the top receiver in the passing game, he'll just be able to stay on the field longer. He's not going to be always in the action. He's going to be a kind of a last resort target for Jayden Daniels, and I think that will be more than enough for David Njoku if he is a Washington Commander for the 2026 season. So I think David Njoku, if we're able to get him on a pretty cheap deal, could be a potential target for the Washington Commanders for the 2026 season. Now, this next guy I'm very high on. I think he has similar talent to Kyle Pitts, and I think that we'll be able to use him a lot better, especially at a much cheaper cost, and that is going to be Isaiah Likely. Now, for the Baltimore Ravens, he had 27 receptions, 307 yards of receiving, and a total of 1 touchdown. He averaged 11.4 yards per reception. Now, Isaiah Likely definitely got overshadowed by Mark Andrews in the Ravens offense. However, I think that once Isaiah Likely, if he does come to the Washington Commanders, could be a focal point in the offense. He's athletic, still very young, being 25 years old, and I think he has pretty good hands, being more like a big body receiver than a tight end. And I think that would allow Jayden Daniels to have another solid target in the passing game for the 2026 season and possibly beyond. I'm very high on Isaiah Likely. He's shown a lot of flashes with the Ravens. He's shown a lot of athleticism. Like I said before, he is more like a big body receiver than he is a tight end. I remember the Bengals game on Christmas, I think it was, where he had that very unfortunate fumble at the goal line. But before that play ended, he showed that he was able to make a good catch and fight for as many yards as possible. Unfortunately, it got knocked out before he was able to cross the goal line. But I really liked the fight, the enthusiasm, the athleticism that he showed, and especially that he's so young, he could be someone that the Commanders could lock up for a couple of years while Jayden Daniels is still under his rookie contract and contending for a future Super Bowl. So I'm very high on Isaiah Likely, and I'd really like if the Commanders brought him to this organization for the foreseeable future. Next up is another guy that I think could really fit into the Washington Commanders offense, and that is going to be Chig Okonkwo, formerly with the Tennessee Titans. This year he had 56 total receptions, 560 yards, 2 touchdowns, and he averaged 10 yards per reception. So unfortunately, Chig Okonkwo is going to be a little bit of a smaller tight end. So I think that he may be used strictly in the passing game. He had over 500 yards of production with the Tennessee Titans, which is pretty good, seeing that he is a tight end, first of all, and that he's in a very, very struggling offense being with the Tennessee Titans. So I think that Chig Okonkwo has shown a lot of flashes, being that he is also very young still and could fit into this Washington Commanders offense in the passing game and being a sort of safety blanket for Jayden Daniels, just how Zach Ertz did in the past couple years. So Chig Okonkwo, formerly with the Titans, I think could also find a spot for himself in the Washington Commanders offense for the 2026 season. Another guy I'm also very high on is Cade Otton. I think he plays a similar role with what Zach Ertz played with the Buccaneers. I think Cade Otton could come in, be this team's tight end one of the future. He's also 26 years old. He's very young. I can see him being this team's future tight end for the next couple years if he is brought to the Washington Commanders organization. With the Buccaneers, he had 59 total receptions for 572 yards, 1 touchdown, and he averaged 9.7 yards per reception. Like I said before, I'm very high on Cade Otton. I think he's shown flashes. He's definitely made a name for himself, especially one in the fantasy football community. I think that with Mike Evans being injured, Cade Otton definitely has made a name for himself in the passing game and being a solid target for Baker Mayfield with the Buccaneers, and I think that he could do the same thing for the Washington Commanders. We definitely do not have as many receivers as the Buccaneers, so I think Cade Otton could definitely be a high priority pass catcher in this Commanders offense if he is brought to the Commanders organization. Cade Otton, I don't think will be asking for a lot of money, so he could be a cheap option when it comes to the tight end room. And there are already a lot of tight ends on the market for this year's free agency cycle, so I think Cade Otton could definitely be a solid target if one of our 2-3 original tight end targets gets snatched up by other teams. Cade Otton could definitely be another player that the Washington Commanders could get and instantly be a competent player in the Washington Commanders offense, and I could see him starting day one and just being another safety blanket for Jayden Daniels. Now, lastly, this guy is definitely not the highest tight end on my list, But that's being Darren Waller. He's also on the wrong side of 30, being 33 years old. He struggled with a lot of injuries in the past couple years, and that could really turn the Commanders off to bringing in a guy like Darren Waller this year for the Miami Dolphins. He definitely has shown flashes of being a reliable pass catcher for Tua when he was healthy, recording 24 catches for 283 yards, 6 touchdowns, and averaging 11.8 yards per reception. So Darren Waller could definitely be a last resort pickup if the Commanders need someone to come in, most likely get injured, but be a safety blanket type of tight end that can, find soft zones and just be able to be a reliable pass catcher for Jayden Daniels. Darren Waller is going to be the last guy on my list. There definitely are other tight ends that are hitting free agency. However, these are the main guys that I think could potentially find their way onto the Commanders roster and potentially be a reliable pass catcher for Jayden Daniels in this offense. I think the Commanders already have some really good blocking tight ends, so I don't think we need to find any versatility in that department. I think we strictly need to look for a really good receiving tight end that can replace Zach Ertz in this offense, being a really good safety blanket for Jayden Daniels. And with that being said, this is the end of the video. I appreciate you watching to the very end. Let me know down below, what tight ends do you want the Commanders to target in this year's free agency cycle? I'd imagine a lot of people are looking for Kyle Pitts, but I know that some of you guys may be looking for other players. So just let me know down below who you want the Commanders to target in this year's free agency cycle for the tight end position. I appreciate you watching to the very end. God bless, and hail to the Commanders.